This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining me again on our video series for helping people out through these difficult times. I've been giving you hints and tricks and things we can do computer-wise, but today I have a very special guest, Tim Medcoff from Fairhaven Medcoff, who is a lawyer here in town. I'm just going to read you a bit of his bio. Tim is an AV-rated attorney who defends clients in the areas of product liability, insurance claims, and medical labor, employment, and commercial litigation. Tim has represented a broad range of employers in all facets of labor and employment law, including defending employers in discrimination cases, wrongful discharge lawsuits, wage and hour claims, union litigation and enforcement of restrictive covenants, and trade secret protections in federal and state courts and agencies. He has also represented employers in labor arbitration grievances and negotiations of collective bargaining agreements. He practices in the area of labor and employment law, product liability, personal injury defense, and commercial litigation. He is a graduate of the University of Arizona, yay! James E. Rogers College of Law, cum laude, very nice. Some other accolades: he is rated Arizona Finest Lawyers from 2014 to present. Top Lawyers in Tucson Lifestyle Magazine 2011-2019. Recipient of the 40 Under 40 Award from Tucson Business Edge Magazine 2007. And an 80 rated by Martindale-Hubbell 2010 to present. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I didn't either, 80 rating means that the attorney has reached the highest of professional excellence and is recognized in the highest level of skill and integrity. Thanks, Tim, for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your clients.
So, obviously, we're going through a very difficult time for everybody, employers and employees both. And I know that you guys have been instrumental in answering a lot of things, but I wanted to hit you up with a few questions that I know we're all getting. From the employer's perspective and the smaller businesses, as far as complying with the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, can you talk about that a little bit? Is there a level in which the smaller businesses have to comply? Do we have to comply at all? I guess would be the question.
Sure. So for small businesses, there is an exemption under the Act that basically allows small businesses 50 or less to not have to comply with it, but it's your burden to prove it. And really it comes down to if giving the leave, paying the leave is going to negatively impact the business to the point that it jeopardizes your ability to stay in business, that would be the main exception or exemption to compliance. Otherwise, if you're a small business employer, which the federal government is defining in this act as 500 or fewer employees in the private sector, then you must provide 2 weeks of paid emergency paid leave and up to 10 additional weeks of expanded family medical leave. And so with respect to a lot of small employers, you may have part-time employees. If you do have part-timers, that doesn't mean you have to pay them 80 hours of sick leave. You have to take the hours that they've worked over the last 6 months, if they've worked for you for 6+ months, and then figure out what their average hours that they work during that period, and then that's what the employee would be eligible for paid sick leave. The benefit for the employer, though, is that you get a dollar-for-dollar payroll tax credit that when you pay your payroll taxes, if hypothetically, let's say your normal payroll taxes are $2,000 a month, if you've got $1,000 of paid sick leave for your employees, then instead of writing the IRS a check for $2,000, you'd be writing them a check for $1,000. So that's a nice way to you're basically front loading the money for the employee for them to take time off from work to go take care of themselves or a sick family member or kids, but then you get the credit right away so that you're not getting dinged or having to wait for a long time to get that money back. Now, if you have more in paid sick leave than you pay in payroll taxes, you can apply to the IRS for a reimbursement, which the IRS has said that they're going to expedite and try to get payments back to employers within 3 weeks. With a little bit of chagrin, I just tell clients, look, be leery of that because we're talking about the IRS. They're not quick at getting people back money on their IRS tax returns. So I know that's their goal is 3 weeks, but it may not be that quick. The other thing with respect to this statute is if you're sick yourself with COVID-19 issues, or you're subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine order, isolation order, then you're entitled to dollar for dollar, basically the wages that you normally get paid at the full rate. But if you're staying home to take care of a sick loved one that's suffering from COVID-19 symptoms, or is quarantined because of the symptoms, or a kid, your child who's home from school, then you get paid at 2/3 of that rate. The other question we've been getting a lot of asked by a lot of employers is, do I have to pay the difference, or allow employees to take the difference for the other third based on a PTO policy, a vacation policy, or Arizona paid sick leave? And the answer is going to depend, right? If they're out taking care of a sick family member, or your policy depends on what it says. So if it allows people to bridge the gap, then you can do that. Other questions we've been asked is, well, what if I'm out of time, or the employee's out of time? Can we allow employees to share amongst themselves? I've been encouraging employers, go ahead and make an exception about sharing between employees, because this is a time when we as a community need to come together and support each other, and that will buy you a lot of goodwill with your workforce during this difficult time. And as we come out of this, it's going to be more of an employer's market, because prior to the COVID-19 crisis, it was a really tight job market. Now it's going to be different. So if you got a reputation of being an employer that takes care of your people, it's going to make it easier for you to hire people and retain people when we come out of the backside of this.
Very true. So if I wanted to, for instance, and I have the capability to, and I wanted to give my employers PTO time, and just to cover all this, I can do that without, obviously under the act we're required to, but I'm saying as an extension of, if they have to be out longer periods of time, I can give them longer periods of time if I need to, correct?
Right. Yeah. So the federal law basically sets the minimum requirements. If the state enacts something broader, or you as an employer, because you're a good person and you want to take care of your people, want to extend it out, then you can definitely extend it out longer. I would caution that there are some employers out there that have had kind of unlimited PTO banks or vacation banks and things of that nature. You just need to be very careful with that, because obviously if you haven't amended that with this law going into effect today, that you could be on the hook for employees basically being out of the office getting paid not to work, because you've got that policy. So you want to make sure that you look at that policy, and assuming your handbook allows you to amend that policy, then you should probably do that. Most handbooks do allow the employer to retain discretion about the policies that it enacts and enforces for its workforce, but definitely want to take a look at that as well.
And then how does the CARES Act play into this? We'll talk about what the CARES Act is, but can you utilize funding from the CARES Act to pay for people that are on PTO?
So yeah, I mean, the CARES Act basically allows you to, if you qualify for it and receive it, then the whole purpose of the CARES Act is to keep people employed for as long as possible, and it's going to give you as an employer 2 months of payroll costs, 2.5 months actually, payroll costs that are covered. So you can use that money to pay your employees. And I've had lots of employers call and say, well, look, I don't want to lay off my people because it was really hard for me to find them and get them trained, and they know my procedures and policies, my environment, my expectations, etc. So can I just keep them on payroll? So yeah, I mean, when they come back, or when you qualify for the payroll protection program, you can use that money to pay your employees to basically stay home and not work. So again, there may be some employees that you have work remotely, but there may be others that you can't have work remotely because they either don't have the equipment, or their job duties and responsibilities don't lend themselves to allow them to work from home. So you as a business owner can make a decision to pay them still, and you can use that monies from the PPP program to pay employees if they're suffering from COVID-19 symptoms and so on.
And then I think there's something in the CARES Act that says that you can't actually let an employee go during that period of time either. There's like limitations on you have to keep the employees employed, obviously. So otherwise you're getting money for somebody that's not there.
So Greg, you're making me earn my money here now. This statute's obviously very new. It's very complicated. It's not as simple as people think it is. So there's actually two doors that apply. So door number one is you haven't laid anybody off between February 15th of this year and present, let's just say, right? If you've done no layoffs and you're able to operate your business and still, whether remotely or having people, your essential service provider, you're still having people come into work. Then once that loan originates, you've got to spend the money in 8 weeks from when the loan originates. So once you have the money, then as long as you keep your payroll costs within 75% of what it normally is, and you don't lose anybody or lay anybody off, you keep the same full-time equivalents, then it will be potentially a dollar for dollar forgiveness for those payroll costs that you spend. Plus, if you use it for rent or mortgage interest or utilities. So all of those would be potentially forgiven under the CARES Act. That's door number one. Door number two is there's been a lot of restaurants, dental offices, other healthcare providers that have either received an order from the American Dental Associations, the American Medical Association, for instance, have issued orders to doctors and practices, don't do non-elective surgeries, right? So as a result, a lot of those businesses have already laid off some people. So Congress, in their wisdom, created door number two. If you've done any layoffs between February 15th and 30 days after this law went into effect, which was signed last Friday, so between February 15th and April 26th, if you do any layoffs during that time period, that's not going to count against you. So what Congress has said is you can still apply and qualify for the loan, and you'll still be eligible for a loan forgiveness as long as you return your full-time equivalents to the same level. So you have until June 30th to get your full-time equivalents back to the level that you had on February 15th of 2020. If you do that, then again, you'll still be eligible for potentially a dollar for dollar forgiveness. Even if you don't get the dollar for dollar forgiveness, though, I've been telling a lot of clients, this is really something that you should take a good hard look at, because this loan is non-recourse, which means you don't have to give a personal guarantee. There's no collateral requirement. So if you default on this loan, there's not like don't have to pledge your business assets against the loan proceeds. It's 10 years at 4% or potentially lower interest. The first 6 months it's interest free. There's no prepayment penalty. So you can use this loan as basically a backstop to give you some breathing room as an employer. That if you've had to lay off some people, or if you need to cut back some people's salary a little bit, you can do that under the act and still get loan forgiveness, dollar for dollar potentially. So, up till now, I mean, good luck going to a lender prior to the COVID-19 crisis and getting a loan at 4% for 10 years amortization with no guarantees, right? I mean, that was impossible. So these SBA loans are a really great opportunity for business owners to take advantage of it, because then even if you don't need all the money, let's say the COVID-19 crisis doesn't hit us as hard because the virus doesn't do well in heat. We're obviously in the 80s for the next few days, which will hopefully help with the stay home order from the governor, keep people home, and then keep the virus from spreading as badly to flatten the curve, so to speak. If you don't end up needing all that money, you just pay it back to the lender you borrowed it from, and you get you either get the forgiveness or you pay it back, and it's like no harm, no foul.
Very interesting. Okay. So if I'm in a situation where I get the loan or don't get the loan, but I have to lay somebody off, is it better to lay off? Is it better to furlough? I've even heard some say fire him first, and then they can actually hire him back later, and it's better for them on benefit side to be fired. So
right. So you're referring to Lindsey Graham's statement last week when they were kicking around this act and whether it was in the best interest of the workforce. So honestly, in Arizona, with the federal stimulus money from the CARES Act at $600 for unemployment benefits, plus the $240 that employees are eligible for in the state of Arizona, If your workforce is paid less than $21 an hour, then it's actually better for them to be on unemployment. So the best, what I've been telling employers, if you want to be, again, a good employer trying to take care of your people, you can get the best of both worlds by doing a furlough, which is basically a reduction in hours, reduction in pay, or a shutdown for a temporary period of time. And so you can do a furlough of, I'm just shutting down my business for anybody that is less than $21 an hour. That way you can go draw unemployment benefits and get paid more not to work. And then that's going to help the whole stay home order from the governor. So you can go home, stay home, take care of your family, take care of your affairs. Don't leave the house except if you got to go buy groceries or go to the doctor or what have you. But otherwise, stay home. You're going to get paid 21 bucks an hour for the next 4 months. And then if you furlough as an employer, if we are able to come out of this crisis quicker, which my hope is that we can do so sometime in May or early June, then you can recall your employees back, because again, you've done a furlough of a shutdown as opposed to laying them off. Because once you lay them off, they've been let go, they've been discharged, they're eligible for unemployment benefits. But if you furlough them, you haven't fired them. So they're not, they are entitled to unemployment benefits, definitely the 600 bucks. What I don't know is if they're entitled to 240. I'm not an unemployment expert, if you will. That's where I've been telling my clients, you need to send your employees to the Department of Economic Security, to their website or their phone numbers, and call and ask that question. But under the federal stimulus package, under the CARES Act, they're definitely entitled to the 600 bucks. They may be entitled to the 240 as well. Either way, that's good money for a lot of the workers that have been laid off, especially for restaurant industry, because not a lot of them are getting paid $21 an hour to do the work that they do, even with tips rolled in. So to me, furloughs are way better. When you lay off people, you lose the right to retain those people. You spend a lot of money and time to train them. Whereas if you furlough them, you can recall them back. And if you recall them back, if they refuse to come back to work, then you can tell Department of Economic Security that they're quitting because I've got work for them. I've called them back and they're refusing to come back. So that's the other reason why I recommend furloughs right now for employers instead of layoffs.
Makes sense. Okay. So we're hoping this virus goes away in the next month or so, and we can start getting back to normal again. If it extends, are you hearing talks of things extending as far as the CARES Act and those things going further? Are there any more word on that, or?
Yeah, there has been some discussion about whether the funding, for instance, the $350 billion for small businesses. There has been some chatter amongst lenders about that getting extended, and I've gotten a lot of questions in the last couple of days from employers. Should I apply now or should I wait? Because if I wait, based on door number one, right, you got to spend the money in the 8 weeks. So if you've either furloughed your employees or reduced their hours, then you're not going to get a dollar for dollar forgiveness necessarily. If you've had to go below the 75% on their pay, on a reduction in pay. So some employers have said it's really to my best interest to wait and apply for the loan like at the beginning of May or mid-May, because I think we'll come out of this crisis a lot closer during that 8-week period, so I can get a better benefit of actually getting that loan forgiven in its entirety. But what I've cautioned employers is that all makes sense logically, right? But there's going to be a rush to go get this money. Because of the terms that I just described to you a minute ago. And you don't want to be left hanging out there not having access to any cash. So I've just been telling employers, talk to your SBA lender. So you have to go to a financial institution that has an SBA loan officer that does 7A loans. So it has to be a bank, a credit union, et cetera, that has an SBA loan officer who's approved to do 7A loans. Not every bank is. And if you don't have a lender that has an SBA loan, contact me. I can give you a list of SBA loan officers, banks that do provide these loans. Some of the banks require you to be a client, an account holder at the bank. Others don't necessarily require you to be an account holder. So, so definitely can reach out to us for that. We can give that help. But those bankers I've been talking to have been saying they think that there's going to be an additional fund on top of the $350 billion, because there's going to be a mad rush to get that money and it's going to get exhausted. And if this lasts longer, then the Congress, I think, is going to have no choice but to fund more money for this. And the other thing that's been kicked around or talked about is rent for people that are renting. Most people that rent are more susceptible to downturns in the economy because they're living paycheck to paycheck, as opposed to homeowners that typically are more affluent. So there's been some talk about passing a stimulus package to help renters. So for those, again, for my clients that I talk to, employers, I tell them you should be telling your employees, again, in the whole be a good guy, take care of your people, to go talk to their landlords about a rent deferment of 30, 60, 90 days on the rent to help those employees that might be struggling right now until the federal stimulus monies come in.
Very good. Well, fantastic amount of information. Is there anything else you'd like people to know that's going on that I haven't touched on?
So one other thing I'll just briefly, Greg, for business owners, as you're looking at your finances, because the last thing you want to do is really lay off people, as I mentioned, or even furlough them, because people look to you as a leader for direction. When crises happen, leaders lead. They look at taking care of their people first and not worry about themselves. And if you take care of your people, then a lot of other things kind of come together, right? So the last thing you want to look is cut your labor costs if you can. So the first thing I recommend that you do is go to your landlord or your mortgage company and ask for a mortgage deferment or a rent deferral for three months or so. A lot of lenders are agreeing to do that right now because if you've been paying your bills, they want to help you through this difficult time. And if you're a leasing property, a lot of landlords are willing to put that money on the back end of your lease. So instead of expiring in December of 2020, it now expires on March of 2021. So that's a way to buy you a little bit of breathing room. The other thing, if you have a lot of employees that are teleworking, you can cut back on all your supplies because nobody's in the office. You don't need as much toner or paper or pens or snacks or drinks. So a lot of those you can eliminate. If you've got sort of discretionary or nice things like cable TV or things like that, again, if nobody's in the office, why are you paying for that service? You can discontinue it for a few months as long as you're not on a long-term contract. And so if you look at all those sort of fixed costs and variable costs first before you get to the labor issue. And then from the labor side, I tell employers, look, you should take a pay cut first before you go to your employees. Because if you do that, it's a lot easier to tell your employees, look, I've made all these other cuts. I'm coming to you last. And again, that's going to buy you a lot of loyalty and goodwill. Tucson's a big, small town, right? Everybody knows everybody. And if you take care of your people during this difficult time, you're going to be in a better position when it comes to rehiring at the back end of this crisis. And then the other thing I tell you, if you apply for the PPP loan, you're going to have a little bit more time on your hands because you're not going to be as busy as an employer. Most businesses, right? Because you can't qualify for that loan unless you had a hiccup in your business, because that's one of the certifications you have to give to even qualify for the PPP program. So think long-term, strategically. What do you want your business to look like 2 months from now, 5 months from now, a year from now? Because it will be an employer's market to hire people, and you'll have a lot of talented employees out there to pick from. So you want to be proactively thinking about what do you want your business to look like down the road so that you can figure out how to target those quality employees that you want to hire.
Fantastic advice. I really appreciate all that you've said today. Tim, how do people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you, get more information?
Sure. So they can call us at 214-2000. They can also send me an email at T as in Tim Medcoff, MEDCOFF as in Frank at farhangmedcoff.com. And I've been working long hours because we get lots of questions right now, as I know you have too, Greg. It's been really invigorating to help people through this crisis, to give them good advice. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about these issues and to educate others to hopefully help put them in a better position so that their businesses not only survive, but thrive.
Thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too.